In the 3rd year of marrying Wen Jing, he regained his sanity. Yet he chose to continue pretending to be a fool, biding his time. At a banquet, in front of everyone, he wiped the grease from his hands onto my dress. He would also pretend to throw a tantrum and spill the soup I'd spent hours making at my feet. The last time, he pretended to be startled and left me in a burning shop. He deceived everyone under the heavens, but left only me out, and only me did he exploit. He was no longer the Wen Jing who thought his wife was the best in the world, but merely the regent Prince Wen Jing whom the world spoke of with terror. The day I requested a divorce happened to coincide with Wen Jing closing his net. The entire capital was in panic, everyone fearing for themselves. Yet he said the soup I made today tasted blander than before, but from the day I learned he'd been deceiving me, I never cooked for him again. When I went to find Wen Jing, he was drinking soup. The foolishness in his eyes had completely vanished, dressed in official robes, his entire being emanated a cold aura. Taking a step closer, one could faintly sense the aura of ruthless authority about him. I heard that today he left early to attend court and settle accounts with those dissidents who had sought favors when he was pretending to be a fool, raiding homes everywhere, throwing the entire capital into panic. This was the real Wen Jing, the regent prince with an iron-fisted rule, but not the husband who kept saying he liked me most. With the divorce papers hidden behind my back, as I was about to bring them forward, I heard him put down his bowl and say, "The soup you made today tastes blander than before." I nodded. "Just tell the kitchen about this. I haven't cooked in a long time. From the day I found out he lied to me, I never made soup myself again, leaving it all to the maids. Turns out he remembered everything from when he was injured and lost his wits, even the exact saltiness of the soup. He just didn't want to drink it." When I looked up, I met his eyes brimming with anger. His knuckles gripping the bowl turned white, as if he wanted to crush it, probably furious that I, a concubine's daughter, dared to deceive him. But he was the one who started lying to me first. 3 years facing each other day and night, when the person before you changes, it is not hard to notice. It probably started after we returned from our outing to the outskirts of the capital. That is when Wen Jing changed. That day the weather was beautiful, and Wen Jing begged me to take him on an outing to the outskirts of the capital. I couldn't refuse him, so I agreed. There were many paths up the mountain, but Wen Jing always pulled me along the most difficult one. He had a tall build and was stronger than me. For the latter half, he basically carried the pastries in one hand and pulled me along with the other. That day I finally couldn't help but ask him, "Why do you always take this path? It is rugged and difficult and takes so much time to climb." Wen Jing's eyes dodged at that time, a blush spreading from his ears to his neck. After hemming and hawing for a long while, under my interrogation, he finally said haltingly, "Because taking this road, I can hold my wife's hand for a long time. A long time." After saying that, he glanced at me and quickly looked away. Even his face turned completely red. I laughed out loud, but the corners of my eyes felt a bit moist. He threatened me in a low voice, "Don't laugh." There was even a hint of aggrieved embarrassment in his tone from being seen through. I nodded and said okay, then took his hand at the foot of the mountain. "Actually, whichever road we take, you can hold my hand for as long as you want." Wen Jing looked at me and nodded contentedly. "Great, now that my wife has promised, you can't go back on it. We have to pinky swear. 100 years, and it will never change." I agreed so lightly and naively believed that we could spend the rest of our lives together. After going up the mountain, I set out some pastries to satisfy our hunger under the shade of a tree, then leaned against the trunk to embroider. Wen Jing chased birds all over the mountain. After a loud bang, Wen Jing's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. I hurriedly dropped my embroidery and ran over, only to see him fallen on the ground, his head having hit a tree nearby. Wen Jing didn't cry and fuss like usual. He covered his head and calmly got up. I thought he was dazed from the pain, and heart-actionally went forward to check if he was injured. "A Jing, squat down and let me see where you are hurt." As I spoke, I anxiously stood on my tiptoes and reached out to touch him, but my hand was unexpectedly swatted away. The force was quite strong, clearly carrying a sense of disdain. "A Jing, did I hurt you?" I asked nervously and helplessly, just in time to catch that fleeting trace of coldness in his eyes. Perhaps Wenjing was just upset that I didn't play with him earlier, or perhaps I had just touched a sore spot. I comforted myself this way. Wenjing perhaps saw through my confusion and began crying out in pain. I had no choice but to dismiss my suspicions and take him down the mountain to see the physician. The path up the mountain is difficult, the path down even more treacherous. This time down the mountain, Wenjing walked alone at the front, not like usual, tightly holding my hand, carefully watching every step of the road for me. He was much taller than me. His broad shoulders at first, completely blocking the path ahead. Later, he walked much faster than me, leaving me far behind. I anxiously tried to catch up, only to fall and scrape the skin on my hands and knees. Wenjing just kept walking forward, never looking back, coming back to my senses. The soup bowl in Wenjing's hands had somehow shattered at his feet. I wasn't surprised the Wenjing before me indeed liked to express his emotions by smashing things, just like when he petulantly splashed the entire bowl of soup at my feet. Hot soup soaked through my shoes and socks, leaving me to force a smile under everyone's gaze. After that time, I never made soup for him again, leaving it all to the maids. I knew clearly he was no longer the Wenjing who thought his wife was the best in the world. My husband would accept without exception every dish I cooked, even when I sometimes forgot the time and burned the food. He would still pick up the charred dish, put it in his mouth, and say cheerfully, "As long as it is made by my wife, Ajing loves it." But I'll never see Ajing again. My nose tingled with emotion. I lowered my head and hastily held back the tears welling up in my eyes. Stepping over the broken porcelain pieces on the ground, I handed the divorce papers to Wenjing. I originally entered the manor because the prince was injured and needed a woman with matching birth characters for a blessing ceremony. Now that the prince has recovered, there is no need for me to stay in the prince's manor anymore. I am merely a concubine born daughter of a marquis household. It was I who reached above my station. What responded to me was a long silence. I figured Wenjing was probably angry that I used soup made by a servant girl to fool him for so long, angry that a mere concubine-born daughter like me dared to divorce him first. Me chin was grabbed by him, forcing me to meet his eyes. His gaze held a coldness, both familiar and strange familiar, because from the day he regained his sanity, even though he continued pretending to be simple-minded, his eyes were cold when looking at me, strange, because Ajing would never look at me like this. You think my regent prince's manor is a place you can come and go as you please? Fury churned in his eyes as he tightened his fingers, making my eyes redden involuntarily. Back then, didn't Marquis Yong'an marry you off to monitor this prince? To see whether this prince had truly become simple-minded or not? Now that you see this prince has recovered, you are scared. If I had really tipped off the Marquis's household, given the regent prince's past way of handling matters, would he have kept me alive until today? I smiled, letting my tears fall freely. Wenjing thought I had ulterior motives, but wasn't he also using me as a cover? The birth date and time that matched Wenjing's was fake. Wenjing was right. My father simply wanted someone to spy on him, to ensure his feigned madness would never be cured. And I was merely a concubine's daughter who wanted to use this opportunity to escape the mansion's disputes. Actually, I once hoped Wenjing would never recover, so I could spend the rest of my life peacefully with him like that. No difficult mother-in-law, no rivalry with sisters-in-law, and no need to worry about bearing children. Although Ajing was simple-minded, he had a sincere heart rare among the noble sons in the capital. For me, that was already enough. After Wenjing recovered, I even indulged in the hope that this was just temporary, that my Ajing would come back. But I forgot that heaven has always been cruel to me. Just as I lost mother when I was young, no, the person before me has completely taken Ajing away. The one before my eyes is not the one in my heart. The moon's reflection in water cannot be caught. Mother said tears are the most useless thing. The more you cry, the more others know your weakness at that moment. I wiped away my tears with my sleeve and forced myself to say calmly, "I've finished what I needed to do, and the Regent Prince has also used me to get everything he wanted. How about we divorce and go our separate ways from now on?" Wenjing looked at me and smiled, his eyes cold and frightening. "You didn't tip off the Marquis Manor. And now you even want to divorce me. Going back to the Yong'an Marquis Manor. Your days won't be easy. He wasn't wrong, going back to the Marquis Manor. Me father and legitimate mother definitely wouldn't tolerate me. But he was also mistaken, the Marquis Manor wasn't my only way out. I have my own plans. No need for your highness to worry. I never agreed to divorce you. Wenjing casually shattered my plan before I could speak. I heard him say with great interest, "These 3 years, I remember you rarely went back to the Marquis Manor. Why not go back and stay for a few days? See your parents." I nodded as he wished. A trace of disappointment crossed Wenjing's face, perhaps thinking I would be afraid. After all, he was the regent prince who had dominated the court for many years, ruthless in his methods, leaving no openings. Wenjing said he remembered I rarely went home these past few years. He remembered everything from these years very clearly. He remembered everything between Ajing and me from before, and remembered every bit of how I was moved by Ajing's sincere heart. Yet he still chose to be cold to me, even wanting to send me back to the Marquis's manor to make me yield and beg for mercy. He disdained me, yet was unwilling to let me go. People are probably all contradictory. I wonder, after returning from the Yong'an Marquis Manor, will your highness agree to divorce me? I looked at him quietly, tears turning into tear stains as the pain in my jaw faded, clinging to my face, dry and itchy. Just like my marriage with Wenjing now. You know very well that your father and I are political enemies. Now that I've been reinstated to my original position, everyone knows I've recovered. If we divorce now, wouldn't that let your father spread the word everywhere that I abandoned my wife who shared my hardships, that I am heartless and ungrateful? I never knew that the always ruthless and merciless regent prince would have times when he cared so much about his own reputation. I didn't respond, just said I'd go back to my room to pack my clothes and then left. On one side is a husband who has repeatedly used my safety as a cover. On the other is a father who, after cutting off contact, is wary of my position. Tomi, the prince's manor, and the Yong'an Marquis Manor are no different now. Early the next morning, Wenjing had someone send me back to the Yong'an Marquis Manor. It was said to be sending me back to reminisce, but in reality it was to have me suffer cold stares. As soon as I got off the carriage, me legitimate mother was waiting at the gate with my legitimate elder sister, who had also returned home to visit relatives at the same time. I thought that after you accompanied that regent prince through his recovery from idiocy, he would protect you like that fool did before. Who would have thought? He actually looks down on you too. Driving you back here, does he think the Marquis Manor should take in a discarded wife like you? My legitimate elder sister kicked me while I was down, looking at me with disdain. Ruan, why don't you greet the princess consort? My legitimate mother gave her a look. Though her words seemed like a reprimand, her tone was actually casual. I used to think sister only had her beauty, but it seems the new concubine brother-in-law recently took in doesn't know her place and has made sister utterly worthless. You, with that my legitimate elder sister Yu Ruan was about to strike me. I caught her falling hand. Sister, are you sure you want to hit me here? Whether I am an abandoned wife or not is not for sister to gossip about. I leaned close to her and said with a low laugh, if the Regent King truly abandoned me, why would he specially send someone to bring me back? If you really lay a hand on me, sister, guess which one can remain unscathed, this Marquis's manor, or sister's husband's family, the minister's manor. Yuruan was, after all, a sheltered wife whose 10 fingers had never touched spring water, and with her wrist held by me, she had no power to fight back. Me legitimate mother's face looked very unpleasant, and she hastily put on a smile. Ruan is just joking with the princess consort, but the princess consort took it seriously. I released my hand, scaring Yu Ruan so much that she rubbed her wrist and retreated repeatedly. Sister's jokes aren't funny. You should be more careful next time. It is nothing if I take it seriously. We're all family, but if the prince takes it seriously, that would be bad. In just a few words, the smugness on Yu Ruan's face had already turned to pallor. Why are you still standing outside? Come in for tea. The Marquise has been waiting for the princess consort. My legitimate mother held Yu Ruan back and hurriedly brought me into the manor. After entering the manor, there was no tea, but instead I was led to my father's study. Since I can remember, I've only been here twice. The first time was to have me marry the injured and supposedly mentally impaired Wenjing, to monitor him. The second time is now. No one could have predicted that Wenjing, who had been feigning mental impairment, would suddenly recover and after, lying low for so long, catch my father completely off guard. Those whose homes were raided yesterday were mostly my father's cronies, coupled with the fact that I had already severed ties with the Marquis Manor. My return today makes it look even more like a show of power. My father is angry inside. I can understand that, and naturally Wenjing can understand it too. But he got it wrong. A concubine's daughter who can survive within these deep manor walls. How could she be that simple? You actually have the face to come back. Who was it that said, "A married-off daughter is like spilled water"? I knelt down upon hearing this. Daughter knows she was wrong. Back then, Wenjing pretended to be mentally impaired to deceive people, and daughter was also fooled by him. To cover his tracks, he didn't hesitate to use daughter's safety as a smokescreen. Daughter was monitored by Wenjing day and night, unable to speak of her suffering. Returning to the manor today is only because Wenjing let his guard down, allowing daughter to risk her life to come back and report to father. As I spoke, I forced myself to shed a few tears. Me father isn't like my legitimate mother and legitimate sister, who can be fooled with just a few words. If I want to return to the Yong'an Marquis Manor, you need to make him trust me completely. Of course, tears alone aren't enough. I lifted my wide sleeves, revealing the scars of varying depths on my arms. This was left behind when Wenjing trapped me in the shop that day, and I couldn't escape as the fire spread. I only learned later that the shop was just one street away from the Xie residence. The young general of the Xie family was on good terms with Wenjing. However, the Xie residence was more well known for their third Miss Xie Lanzhen, simply because it was widely rumored in the capital back then. The regent Prince Wenjing has not married for years because he is waiting for third Miss Xie. Even my father couldn't help but show a flash of shock in his eyes when he saw the wound on my arm. If father still thinks this was a self-inflicted injury scheme, you are more than welcome to inquire about the fire at the fabric shop on East Street in the western part of the city last month. That fire nearly cost me my life. When I was rescued, me dress was half destroyed, and my right arm was seriously injured. Fortunately, the shop assistant broke down the door in time and saved me. I inhaled too much smoke and was unconscious for 3 whole days. During those 3 days, I heard that Wenjing, supposedly frightened by the fire, stayed at the Xie residence, cared for by young General Xie Si and Xie Lanzhen, and never once returned to the estate to see me. Frightened, just an excuse to take advantage of the chaos. The latter was Wenjing's true purpose. As for me, to him I was nothing more than a pawn that could be discarded at any time. This Wenjing is actually so ruthless, even his lawful wife isn't spared. After a long while, my father finally spoke. I breathed a sigh of relief. He finally believed me. I smoothed out my sleeves, covering the scars properly. The wound has healed and won't hurt anymore. How to make good use of this scar, that is the best strategy. Since Wenjing sent you back to the manor, did he give you any instructions? My father asked me again. He did not. Wenjing knows that father will take out his anger on your daughter because of what he has done recently, and he is well aware of father's original purpose in marrying your daughter off to him. Sending your daughter back this time is so father can dispose of this useless chess piece himself, and so there'll be one less spy around him in the future. My father nodded. According to what you are saying, wouldn't I have to go along with it to avoid arousing Wenjing's suspicion? Your daughter believes father should do the opposite. If you go along with it, your daughter will never be able to return to the prince's manor and will truly become a useless chess piece. On the contrary, if Wenjing knows your daughter is doing well back at the manor, It would precisely indicate that your daughter has brought useful information to the Marquise's household. After all, your daughter truly lived in the prince's manor for 3 years, and once treated the foolish Wen Jing with genuine sincerity. Wen Jing is deeply suspicious by nature, so he'll naturally suspect the information your daughter passes to the Marquise's household, and naturally won't want your daughter staying at the Marquise's household too long. Only if your daughter returns to the prince's manor can it benefit father. Only this way can I truly leave. Yu Chun, if you had thought this way from the beginning, things wouldn't have reached such a state today. My father helped me up, which meant he had relaxed his guard against me. That is right, if I had chosen another path from the beginning, perhaps things would be different. But the Wen Jing I met wasn't like this at the start either. With my father's protection, life at the Marquis Manor became much more pleasant. Even though Yu Ruan was dissatisfied with me, she could only glare at me for 2 days before returning to her husband's family. Me legitimate mother, out of consideration for my father, didn't dare make things difficult for me, and even gave me quite a bit of silver to buy things. Money delivered to my doorstep. It'd be a waste not to spend it. First I went to the best restaurant in the capital, Zuixi and Lu, for a meal. Can't spend money well on an empty stomach. After eating and drinking my fill, I brought my maid to the jewelry shop. He exchanged the silver in my hand for portable jewelry, which would be convenient to take with me later. My young lady saw this bracelet first. This madam is being rather too forceful in taking what others love. Just as I had picked out a jade bracelet, a sharp, sarcastic voice came from another spot. Looking back, it was Shilanzhen and her maid speak of the devil, and she appears. I also like this jade bracelet. Madam, could you perhaps give it up? Shilanzhen's tone was much gentler, but her eyes held a smile concealing daggers. From the moment I picked out this jade bracelet, Miss Xia never said a word, but just as I am paying, you say this, are you short on cash and planning to rob me? As soon as the words fell, the onlookers all snickered. Shilanzhen, having lost face, immediately turned red and pale. Who said I am planning to snatch it by force? I am willing to pay double the price for the jade bracelet in your hand. I am from the Yong'an Marquis Manor and the princess consort of the regent prince. Does Miss Xia think I can't afford this bit of silver? I slipped the jade bracelet onto my wrist. Shopkeeper, I'll pay triple the price. Put it on the Yong'an Marquis Manor's account. Then I'll pay 5 times, Shilanzhen responded. I looked at her and shook my head with a smile. Shopkeeper, your Ningyu Pavilion opens its doors for business, so you should understand that merchants must maintain integrity. Everything should follow a first-come, first-served principle. Right. Otherwise, if everyone acts like Miss Xia in the future, throwing money around to snatch whatever they fancy. I don't see the need for price tags in your store anymore. The shopkeeper nodded with difficulty, while the onlookers murmured in agreement with me. Today I'll pay 10 times the price for this jade bracelet, and let it be a lesson for Miss Xia. Some things when you don't value them at first, but then try to snatch them when others want to buy them, this shows you don't truly like them at all, and you can't keep them either. Yu Shilanzhen naturally understood what I was implying. Her face flushed red, but under everyone's pointing and whispering, she couldn't refute me, and could only flee in embarrassment. As soon as I returned to the manor, we ran into my legitimate mother. She was holding an account book, and her expression wasn't pleasant. The princess consort has returned. Does madam need me for something? No need to guess, I knew it was about me buying the jade bracelet at such a high price. Although my legitimate mother gave me silver, compared to the cost of this jade bracelet, it was merely a drop in the bucket. Today's bill for the bracelet, and everything else would be enough to give her a headache. Earlier, Samon came to the door demanding payment for things the princess bought during the day. I know the princess hasn't been home in many years and needs to purchase many things, but the shopkeeper of Ningyu Pavilion said that today the princess got into a dispute with someone and spent 10 times the price to buy a jade bracelet, which seems a bit too extravagant. If Yu Chun likes it, our Marquis Manor can afford any amount of money. Why make things difficult for her over such a trivial amount of silver for no reason? Following the voice, I saw that father and Wen Jing had somehow appeared standing not far away. My legitimate mother's expression wasn't good after being scolded by father. When all is said and done, it is still my fault. I've been busy with official duties recently and left the princess at the Marquis's manor for too long, troubling the Marquis and Madam. Wenjing spoke to smooth things over, his smiling eyes containing emotions I couldn't understand. Not at all. All these years Yuchon has stayed by the prince's side without leaving even once, never returning to the Marquis manor. Now that she is finally back, it perfectly relieves this old man's pain of missing his daughter. Ha ha ha. Father was very pleased. He knew Wenjing had taken the bait. The way you put it, Marquis, I am practically turning into a wife-waiting stone. Wenjing walked to my side and grasped my hand, fingers interlocked, palms slightly cool, a touch that made me want to escape. But he held on tightly. That force made me dazed for a moment, as if a Jing was still here, in the past when he pulled me up the mountain. He also liked to hold my hand like this, but a Jing didn't smile like this. He could never learn to smile this way, eyes and brows containing a smile, yet making one feel a bone-chilling coldness, so cold it jolted one awake instantly. Still looking at the wife-waiting stone, clearly you just find me annoying. Today at Ningyu Pavilion, I was nearly bullied, and you don't even know to stand up for me. I complained resentfully, playing along with his act. All right, let me see who dares to upset the princess consort. I definitely won't let her off easily. Wenjing took the opportunity to pull me into his embrace, then I won't disturb the Marquis and Madam any further. After getting on the carriage, I shook off Wenjing's hand. His body stiffened for a moment as he withdrew his hand somewhat rigidly. There is no one here. The regent prince needn't keep up the act. Wasn't it you who wanted to return to the prince's manor, so this prince came to fetch you? Wenjing said with a smile, not taking what just happened to heart. It was the prince who sent me to be cold-shouldered. I am merely still alive, that is all. If I didn't deceive father and the legitimate mother, once they knew I had no more use, I'd be like fish on a chopping board. You contradicted Lan Zhen and said those pointed words. Was it really just to stay alive? Wenjing leaned closer, that face that was once pure and innocent now written all over with calculation. My prince's words I don't understand. She planned to forcibly snatch my jade bracelet, so I was merely talking about the jade bracelet. Or is it that the prince has other thoughts in his heart, which led him to misunderstand my words? Jealous of Lan Zhen? Not at all. What she likes is the regent prince Wenjing, while what I love is my husband Jing. How could there be any jealousy? Wenjing narrowed his eyes. I was mistaken. You are much more interesting than I thought. Cool fingers covered my face. What exactly do you want? Divorce. I want Jing to come back. But he can't do it. I want a divorce. But the current Wenjing can't do that either. These past few days returning to the Marquis estate and dealing with my father and legitimate mother have already let Wenjing see my true face. Now if I want to leave, it won't be that easy. Wenjing sneered. If you obediently behave, the prince's estate doesn't mind keeping one more idle person. When I returned to the prince's estate, I discovered that some of the furnishings in the room had changed. The shoes I had made for Jing that were in the wardrobe were gone. Those were the ones he begged me to make for him to wear on his birthday this year. The clothes I had previously made for Jing that I took back from Wenjing's room were also all gone without a trace. The storybooks Jing usually liked to read were gone, replaced by several poetry collections. The place where the landscape painting hung originally had the paper kite Jing made for me. I called over a maidservant and asked her where all the original things in my room had gone. The maidservant looked troubled, and only after a long while told me, Princess Consort. The prince said keeping these old things around was inauspicious, and had us dispose of them all. Where were they sent? I pressed. Princess, please don't make things difficult for us. His Highness forbids us from saying. I collapsed to the ground, my face ice cold. It was tears that had somehow soaked my face. Since Wenjing had done this, he had clearly decided to make it impossible for me to find those things again. Why should I make things difficult for a servant whose situation was not much different from mine? He wanted to erase all proof of Jing's existence for him. It was undoubtedly a past too painful to look back on. But I will never forget a Jing. Never. When Xialanzhen came, I was making shoes. His Highness doesn't like this kind of pattern. I'd say you are just wasting your effort. She looked at me, deliberately revealing a section of her snow-white wrist, which made the jade bracelet appear even more translucent. This one is much better quality than the one you bought that day. His Highness specifically requested it from the Emperor for me. Xialanzhen was still young after all her emotions were written all over her face. I calmly put away my needle and thread. If I were you, I wouldn't be able to smile anymore. What do you mean by that? Xialanzhen didn't understand. It is just a jade bracelet. With the royal manor's wealth, 1,000 or 10,000 would be no problem. But there is only one legitimate wife in the royal manor, me. In His Highness's heart. You are nothing more than a woman who can be placated with a jade bracelet. What do you know? Xialanzhen immediately retorted. Back then, the news that Wen Jing would marry no one but you was known throughout the capital, yet he never got engaged to you. Normally, the Xia family should quickly stop these rumors involving a young lady's reputation, but they're letting the news spread. This shows it is probably a tactic the Xia family is using to force him to marry you. Xialanzhen's sore spot was struck by me, and her face flushed red with anger. So what? This princess consort position will never fall to a concubine-born daughter like you. You are overthinking it. I am telling you this not to compete with you. I took out the jade bracelet I bought last time from my vanity case and slipped it onto her wrist. What are you plotting? Xialanzhen's momentum deflated by more than half. I just want to help you out, so when you enter the household later, don't make things difficult for me. She clearly didn't believe me. Didn't you just say the prince cares about you? Why are you being so fake now? He cares about me only because I shared years of hardship with him, partly for a good reputation, and partly because he doesn't want to break ties with my father. I lifted my sleeve, revealing the uneven scar on my arm. Looking like this now, would he still want to be intimate with me? Xialanzhen stepped back 2 paces, averting her eyes in disgust. I quickly pulled down my sleeve, putting on an embarrassed expression. The fish has taken the bait after all. Xialanzhen ended up believing it. These past few days, she has been coming to the prince's residence frequently, and when she can't find Wen Jing, she comes looking for me. The excuse she finds is simple too, saying she wants to learn needlework from me. Even Wen Jing noticed and asked me why I had suddenly become so harmonious with Xialanzhen. He smiled and replied, "She'll be entering the prince's manor eventually anyway. So why should I make an enemy for myself?" Wen Jing stared at the shoes in my hands, lost in thought, and only after a long while said, "But the shoes you are making aren't the kind I like. These weren't meant for your highness in the first place." I finished the last stitch and raised my hand to rub my eyes. After staying up for several nights, my eyes were dry and sore. I am not that fool. Thinking I hadn't understood, Wen Jing repeated it once more. I know. The 2 of us remained silent like this, and I don't know how long it was before he finally left. For several days in a row, Wen Jing didn't come again, until Xialanzhen visited again. He had the servants relay a message to me, telling me to cook all dishes that a Jing used to love most. He said it himself that he wasn't a Jing, so I couldn't be bothered to waste my energy. I told the kitchen servants how to make the dishes and watched them cook that could count as doing it myself. Not only did Xialanzhen come, but Shi came along as well. Since Wen Jing wanted me to cook, I simply stayed in the kitchen so as not to ruin the important business. "Princess Consort, His Highness has had too much to drink and is looking for you right now." In order not to arouse suspicion, I could only nod and follow the servant over, but I'd barely walked a few steps when I ran into Xia, who reached out and blocked my way. "Princess Consort, if you go and disrupt His Highness's good time. When His Highness blames you later, don't say this general didn't warn you." Shi spoke, half politely, half threateningly. I looked at the servant with difficulty. General Xie has a point. After all, Miss Xie is going to marry over here eventually. Anyway, it is the same if she serves His Highness in my place. The servant looked at Xie, then looked at me, not daring to say anything more. After the servant left, I nodded at Xie, entrusting him with watching over those two. I stretched lazily and returned to my room to pack everything away properly. This time I couldn't lose the shoes I made for a Jing again. At first, Wenjing didn't notice anything wrong with the soup and drank half a bowl continuously. Normally, no matter how much he liked something, he would only take 2 or 3 sips at most. Not revealing likes or dislikes, concealing emotions, it had long become a habit. But today, with this bowl of soup, he went straight ahead and drank half a bowl. If it weren't for a strange heat gradually surging up in his body, he wouldn't have noticed at all. If anything was to blame, it was that the soup's saltiness was just right. Wenjing didn't like himself after getting injured foolish like a 7 or 8-year-old child, making a complete fool of himself in front of others. He had never revealed his true feelings to anyone, yet that fool was utterly devoted to Yu Chon. Even he himself had been influenced by that fool's preferences. Shilan kept pushing herself in front of him, serving him food. If it were before, Wenjing wouldn't have eaten it. But with anger surging in his heart, he tasted them all one by one. After the entire table of dishes, only the soup's flavor matched his memory, so it was deliberate. She deliberately only made the soup herself. No wonder these past few days she and Xialanzhen let bygones be bygones. Wenjing used his drunkenness as an excuse to stand up, and had the servants summon Yu Chun. Rage and restlessness mixed together, making him irritable. It was at this moment that Xialanzhen followed him over, looking at him with tender eyes, trying to take advantage of the chaos to get close. In the end, he had underestimated Yu Chun, originally thinking she was just a simple daughter from a concubine. She knew clearly he had no intention of marrying a Xie family daughter, but wouldn't move against the Xie family for the time being. She knew even more clearly that the Xie family was anxious to marry off their daughter. In the end, she played him like a fool. Ivrion was a pawn in her game. Interesting, truly interesting. Wenjing laughed self-mockingly, struggling to maintain his last shred of reason as he pushed Xialanzhen away, then suddenly hurled the wine cup in his hand to the ground. The sound of shattering porcelain made Xialanzhen cry out in alarm, and she looked straight into Wenjing's icy gaze. "Get out." With his furious roar, Xialanzhen clearly understood the plan had failed and could only retreat in panic. Wenjing took a deep breath, forcibly enduring the discomfort throughout his body as cold sweat seeped from his forehead. The servants came in at the sound, but seeing his ashen face, they only dared to lower their heads in silence, afraid that in the next moment they would become the outlet for his rage. "Where is the princess consort?" The princess said she didn't dare disturb the prince's fun, so she should be resting in her room right now. Resting in her room, making those childish shoes again. Wenjing couldn't care about anything else and headed straight to Yushan courtyard as soon as he left. In fact, after Wenjing's body recovered, he had only come to Yushan courtyard 3 times. The first time was after Yuchen returned to the Marquise's estate, when he came to find out how much she had learned about him over the years. But what caught his eye were traces of that fool's existence everywhere. The clothes she made for him, the paper kite he gave her. The second time was when he learned Yuchon had been getting close to Xialanzhen recently, and he caught her making shoes again. Exactly the same as the pair he had ordered someone to dispose of last time. Clearly not made for him. The third time, Wenjing stood at the doorway, laughing at the empty room. His cold, angry laughter made the servants too scared to lift their heads. He should have realized it earlier. She had schemed so carefully to set him up, all just to escape. "Where is she? Where is she?" The servants all knelt on the ground in unison, not daring to make a sound. Wenjing walked into the room and opened all the cabinets, checking them over carefully. She didn't take anything with her, at least nothing from the estate, probably just the gold, silver, and trinkets she brought back from the Yong'an Marquise's estate. "And those shoes. I've walked the road from the prince's estate to the dock many times, and during these few days at the Marquise's estate, using the excuse of going out to shop, I also familiarized myself with the general patrol routes of the city guards in the area. Jing really liked coming to the docks. He liked taking boats and wished he could just drift away with the water, wandering everywhere. But back then, Jing didn't know that the emperor and my father would absolutely never allow him to leave their sight. Sometimes I had no choice but to hire a boatman to take us for a short ride nearby. It was only about half an incense stick's worth of time, but it could make Jing very happy sometimes. When he really saw how much I was suffering from seasickness, he would also have the boatman end it early. Taking the waterway to leave the capital wasn't the best plan. I get seasick, and this stretch of water flows slowly better to take a carriage. Wenjing was also aware of these disadvantages. In order to leave smoothly, I could only do the opposite. I was betting that something else would come up between Wenjing and Shi Lanji, betting that he wouldn't guess I'd take the waterway. After finally getting on the boat, I found myself a corner to sit down. Fortunately, the boat wasn't rocking too violently, and my reaction wasn't too bad either. The sky gradually darkened. I held onto the bundle in my arms, not daring to fall asleep. After the boat passengers had all fallen asleep, I could faintly see firelight following on the water behind the boat. Me heart tightened. I walked to the side of the boat, planning to get a clear look at the boat following us. The boat ahead stopped immediately. The passengers who had been asleep all woke up startled, and the boatman also ran to the stern. "It is a government boat. Is there a fugitive on this boat? This is the Imperial City Department." The passengers looked at each other in terror. It was Wenjing coming after me. Wenjing came from the Imperial City Bureau to begin with, and although the Imperial City Bureau served as the Emperor's claws and fangs, inside and out, it was full of Wenjing's people. Even when the Emperor and my father tried, they couldn't completely eliminate Wenjing's influence while he was still recovering from his injuries. I knew full well that falling into Wenjing's hands would mean nothing good for me, and was hesitating whether to risk jumping into the water to seek a slim chance of survival. Just then, a whistling arrow came flying through the air, grazing past the side of the boat and embedding itself in the deck, its tail humming and vibrating. I froze in my movements and saw that boat had arrived not far away. The firelight illuminated the river water, reflecting on Wenjing's face. He stood at the bow with drawn bow, head tilted with eyebrows slightly raised, thin lips curved in a smile, the bowstring aimed directly in my direction. It was both a provocation and a warning. Looking more carefully, I noticed his hand was wrapped in gauze, the white cloth already seeping with dark stains, spreading from his palm all the way up his arm. I moved away from the side of the boat and stood up. "The princess consort is being naughty, making this prince search so hard for you." As the two boats came together, he looked down at me from above and extended his injured hand toward me. I had no choice but to place my hand in his. Wenjing abruptly grabbed my wrist and with brutal force pulled me onto the Imperial City Bureau's boat. I couldn't stand steady at all, my whole body crashing into his embrace, getting covered in his cold aura. Me nose was surrounded by the icy night wind, and where he gripped my wrist hurt painfully from how tight it was. Looking down, Wenjing had already let go and left. A faint light-coloured mark could be seen on the wrist. "Keep a close eye on her." I was confined by Wenjing to the royal residence, not allowed to leave the courtyard. But the next day, a servant summoned me to attend to Wenjing. As the door opened, a bitter medicinal smell hit me in the face. As I walked into the room, the door closed behind me, leaving only Wenjing and me in the room. He lay on the bed, his face completely devoid of colour. I recalled the cold air emanating from his body last night. Perhaps he caught a chill last night. Ever since Wenjing got injured, his body had been very weak. He couldn't be exposed to wind or cold. I often made soup for him, also following the physician's advice to nourish his body. He heard me enter and opened his eyes to look at me. According to the maid, the injury on his palm was from smashing the teacup on the table in a fit of rage, and the other injury was from punching the wall. I could guess the latter. The landscape painting in my room was nowhere to be found, and the wall it originally covered had become unrecognizable. "I don't understand what your highness is saying." Wenjing smiled, his pale face gaining a bit of color. "The year before you married into the royal residence, your legitimate older sister was discussing marriage prospects. but her face ended up festering and couldn't be healed for a long time. In the end, she could only hastily marry the eldest son of the minister's residence as his second wife. After marriage, she was neglected and suppressed, and her days haven't been easy. Your legitimate mother secretly lent out usurious loans, and in the end the borrower disappeared without a trace. She suffered a loss in silence, and then was discovered by the Marquis of Yong'an, who not only scolded her harshly but made her use her former dowry to fill the hole, which caused your legitimate sister's wedding dowry to look shabby as well. I underestimated the princess consort before. Had I not ordered a thorough investigation, I wouldn't have known the princess consort was so clever. The Imperial City Department truly has means that reach the heavens. No matter how capable I am, I can't compare to your Highness's methods. I am not surprised that Wenjing could find all this out, but it is later than I expected. Perhaps being foolish for several years really did make his reactions slower too. Actually, if you think carefully, you can guess that when Wenjing was the regent prince, he made many enemies, taking advantage of his serious illness and foolishness. Those who had been angry but dared not speak out back then finally made their move. It is just that Jing is naive, so I never told him. As for the person before me, there is no need for him to know either. Why would you like that fool? He asked me. Because he is my husband. My answer was a bit redundant, but when I asked Jing before, he answered me the same way. Because my wife is my wife. When I first married into the prince's manor, I had just turned the Marquis's household upside down, leaving it in complete chaos. But it was nothing more than an eye for an eye. They all bore responsibility for my mother's death. Me mother was just a maidservant that the Marquis of Yong'an took advantage of when he was drunk, of lowly status, with no one caring about her. So I naturally became the pawn my father married off to the prince's manor. As the most unremarkable daughter, being able to marry into the prince's manor was my fortune. Those were my father's exact words at the time. I was more than happy to go staying at the Marquis Manor. Who knows what kind of messy person I'd end up marrying. A fool is always better than a scumbag. The Marquis Manor, the Prince's Manor, to me there was no difference at all. I just never expected that I would meet Aging. On our wedding day, everything was kept simple. No guests, no wedding gifts. A red silk canopy, a pair of red candles, that was all there was. After the bright red veil before my eyes was removed, what came into view was Aging's face. Sharp features, looks like a banished immortal. Yet his eyes revealed a simple-minded innocence. He wasn't hot-tempered and prone to tantrums like the rumors said. Instead, he carefully handed me a piece of white jade cake and asked ingratiatingly, "They say brides have to go hungry for a long time. This white jade cake is really delicious. Are you hungry? Do you want to try some?" Seeing that I didn't respond, he brought over other pastries from the table. If you don't like white jade cake, there are others. There is chicken leg, dragon's beard candy, sweet dates, wine. No wine. It doesn't taste good. He made me laugh. But what if I want to drink wine? He furrowed his brows, looking at me helplessly. Then you can drink a little, just a tiny bit. They say drinking hurts your body, and I have to take care of my wife. I can't let you get hurt. As he spoke, he poured a small cup of wine and handed it to me. I took the wine, laughing so hard I was shaking all over, and spilled it all out. He still stupidly tried to catch it. The wine spilled. My lady has no wine to drink. His brows furrowed even tighter. Without drinking a single drop of wine, I felt intoxicated. I cupped his face and asked him, "Why are you so good to me? This is clearly our first time meeting." His brows relaxed. "Because my lady is my lady." He blurted it out without hesitation, as if it were the most natural thing. "I am also your husband." Because he was still sick, Wenjing's eyes had less sharpness and more innocence. Wenjing remembered how she had carefully taken care of that fool when he was sick, and how she would warm the medicine and feed it to him bit by bit. Now, as they gazed at each other, she just looked at him and laughed. More than anger, what Wenjing felt in his heart was actually a sense of loss. His heart was being pulled, sinking with a dull ache. Wenjing felt he must have gone mad to say such things. The prince went through so much trouble to capture me and bring me back. Surely it is not just to say these trivial words. Of course not. Wenjing tried hard to maintain his composure. He needed someone to take care of him now, both instinctively and rationally. Yu Chun was the best choice. She had personally attended to him for 3 years and knew his body well after his injuries. These next few days, stay by my side and take care of me. Yu Chun smiled again, picking up the bandage by the bedside and playing with it on her fingertips. Wenjing unexpectedly recalled the sensation of holding her hand back, then slender yet somewhat bony beneath the wide sleeves. The traces left after her arm wounds healed were faintly visible. He didn't know how she had managed to survive. Back then, Wenjing had never thought about caring for anyone. Sometimes he would think, if Yu Chun had left early that day, he probably wouldn't be this indecisive now. Take care of you. Now that the prince is gravely ill. Aren't you afraid I might have ulterior motives at this time? Wenjing met her gaze with a smile. Her laying out her intentions so nakedly meant she didn't actually plan to do so. The entire estate is full of secret guards from the Imperial City Department. There are quite a few just outside my room. If something happens to me, you won't be able to leave either. But he was willing to go along with her conversation. The prince had me come back. Probably not simply to be a servant girl, right? Then why don't the princess consort guess for herself what my true purpose is? Purpose, even Wenjing himself couldn't articulate the purpose. At first, bringing her back from the Marquis estate was indeed to prevent her from colluding with the Marquis household. Later, braving the cold of an autumn night to search for her, even he himself wasn't clear whether it was a moment of impulse or if he had other motives. Wenjing looked at Yu Chun. His illness made it impossible for him to keep seeing her clearly. The person before him was sometimes clear, sometimes blurred, like the moon in water, sometimes near, sometimes far. I put down the bandage for changing dressings in my hand and went to change Wenjing's dressing. The Emperor now trusts what the Marquis of Yong'an says. Although your Highness has settled accounts, you've earned the Emperor's suspicion. I am guessing your Highness wants me to help you eliminate the treacherous officials by the sovereign's side. Wenjing's purpose wasn't hard to guess at all. He knew I had deceived my father at the Marquis of Yong'an's manor. So now in dealing with my father, I was undoubtedly the best chess piece. And since I had already offended the Xia manor by causing Xilanzhen embarrassment through my failed scheme, if Wenjing sent me back to the Marquis's manor, he would undoubtedly have nowhere to turn. He knew that to survive I only had one path to take, and he also happened to want to eliminate my father, to remove all future troubles. After hearing this, Wenjing smiled with satisfaction. The princess consort indeed hasn't disappointed me. I learnt it all from your Highness. Wenjing had the physician prescribe strong medicine, and by the second day the symptoms had been suppressed considerably. Strong medicine harms the body and only depletes one's foundation, especially since Wenjing had suffered severe injuries before, but he had no choice and could only force himself to attend court. In his current position, with the Emperor wary of him, and at odds with my father like fire and water, the slightest mistake and the bystanders at court would pounce at the first sign, which would only lead to his utter ruin. For those in power, it is just like this. Seemingly glorious on the surface, only they themselves can see the 10,000 jang cliff beneath their feet. One step back is an endless abyss. So I don't have naive plans like Xilanzhen does. A chess piece will one day lose its usefulness, so while I still have value, I need to find a way out. Wenjing allows me to go out and socialize with the ladies and madams. But every time I go out, he always assigns 2 maids to follow me. Openly, it is 2 maids. But the number of hidden guards in the shadows is far more than that. Wenjing wants to make sure I won't escape again, but he doesn't know that my other path was never in these superficial social gatherings. The Great Qi is strong and prosperous, and the Emperor is still young, so there are frequent banquets in the palace. Just in time for the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Emperor holds a banquet for his officials and their families. At the banquet, I ran into Xilanzhen. Since the last time her scheme failed, she hasn't come to the prince's manor again. I heard from the maids that Wenjing gave orders not to let her set foot in the prince's manor. I also learned from conversations with noble ladies that Xia Si has been repeatedly impeached recently, and the emperor has long intended to pressure the Xia family. XECI is busy running around for the Xia manor, and clearly knows that Wenjing is no longer willing to protect the Xi family either, so Xilanzhen can only be forced to behave herself. I heard that Xia Ci intends to choose a husband for Xilanzhen, but due to the rumors from before, many noble families are hesitant. During the banquet, I repeatedly felt Xilanzhen's resentful gaze. Wenjing puts on an act of loving his wife dearly in front of others, making her believe even more that my advice that day was just an excuse to get rid of her. This is also Wenjing's warning to me he wants to remove my supporters one by one, leaving me with no choice but to depend on him. What, even you have days when you are afraid? Wenjing naturally noticed Xilanzhen's gaze and joked. I just feel uncomfortable being stared at all the time. I picked up my wine cup and was about to drink when I accidentally met Xilanzhen's eyes, only to find that the anger in her eyes had disappeared and was replaced by smugness. Apart from the fragrance of fruit wine, there was no other smell in the cup. I took a sip and wiped my mouth with a handkerchief, pretending to swallow, when in fact all the wine was in the handkerchief. Looking at Xilanzhen again, she quickly averted her gaze, unable to hide the smile at the corners of her mouth. I suddenly remembered that the sleep-inducing incense she had been asking about recently was also colorless and odorless. I felt like laughing but could only pretend to be flustered. I was worried about not finding a chance to leave the banquet, but Xilanzhen had helped me out. "Where are you going?" Seeing me stand up, Wenjing instinctively grabbed my wrist. "This wine is a bit intoxicating. I want to go out for some air to sober up." The fruit wine at palace banquets isn't easily intoxicating, ensuring it is suitable for young and old alike, for everyone to drink together. There is no way Wenjing couldn't hear the implications in my words. Yet he released my hand. He was waiting for me to ask him for help, but I hoped he wouldn't follow. When ministers and their families enter the palace, their servants must wait outside the palace gates. The palace guards had long been taken back by the emperor, and the Imperial City Bureau's secret guards couldn't enter the palace. This path was just right for one person to walk alone, having calculated that Xilanzhen would follow. I walked deeper into the palace, following my memory. "Trouble you, Gong Gong. I have a matter for which I must see the noble consort." "Beg me. You used to promise me things left and right, but you haven't done a single one of them." The bright yellow brocade boots walked step by step before my eyes. Looking up, I met his gaze directly. This was the current son of heaven, Yuan Shun. Back then, the physician said Wenjing's madness could not be cured. This commoner woman never expected Wenjing would suddenly recover. This commoner woman was also kept in the dark by him and nearly lost her life. "If your majesty doesn't believe me, you can certainly investigate. Wenjing dislikes my lowly status, and that I was once a spy sent by the Marquis of Yong'an, so he looks down on me. In the prince's manor, we walk on thin ice every day. If my circumstances weren't so dire now, with nowhere else to turn, I wouldn't disturb your majesty today." I knelt on the ground, my forehead pressed against the cold brick surface, waiting for Yuan Shun to speak. "How do you expect me to trust you?" Yuan Shun knew my circumstances. Coming here today was nothing more than wanting to see me make a fool of myself. But those in power don't have overflowing compassion, and even less would they be swayed by a few words from me. Wenjing has many properties under his name. During the 3 years he was mad, this commoner woman managed them all. The annual profits were substantial, but they don't match up with the silver stored in the prince's manor treasury. This commoner woman believes these are all expenses Wenjing used to curry favor and grease palms everywhere. Although the nation is now prosperous and strong, the silver your highness withdraws from the national treasury must all be recorded. Though you have a private treasury, the funds are limited after all. How could that compare to the continuous flow from these properties? Yu Wengxun suddenly smiled. "What if this is a scheme between you and Wenjing? Then I would be at a loss again. If your majesty doesn't trust me, this commoner woman is willing to stake her life as guarantee first. Yu Wengxun is an ambitious ruler, otherwise he wouldn't have schemed with my father against Wenjing. He told him my plan. You want me to make a move against Wenjing again? What if it gets exposed? Your Majesty can do it through the Marquis of Yong'an's hand. Wenjing is currently worried about not having a chance to strike at the Marquis of Yong'an. And secondly, this matter can be used to suppress the Marquis of Yong'an's household. The way between ruler and subject, the principles of social order are right there. Even if Wenjing knows, what can he do to Your Majesty? Your Majesty has already assumed personal rule. If Wenjing defies Your Majesty, it would be treasonous. During the 3 years Wenjing was foolish, although Yu Wengshun took personal rule, it also helped the Marquis of Yong'an's household grow stronger. For a ruler, the most important thing is balance. Rather than one side becoming too powerful, it is better to have both sides checking and balancing each other. Yu Wengshun understands this principle, otherwise he wouldn't have kept me alive until now. What he needs now is not to eliminate Wenjing but to suppress both Wenjing and my father at the same time. Yu Wengshun looked at me and smiled. You are so clever. I really want to know why you won't continue helping Wenjing. Wenjing is ruthless. If not for this commoner woman's good fortune, I would have already left this world. Your Majesty is a benevolent ruler, whether in the past or now. You've never made a move against this commoner woman. Besides, Wenjing's recovery is ultimately this commoner woman breaking her word to Your Majesty. You do have a conscience. No wonder back then you never abandoned Wenjing even when he was foolish and simple-minded. But you misjudged Wenjing. Aren't you afraid you've also misjudged me? Yu Wengshun was a young man after all, his words carrying a hint of arrogance. Your Majesty knows this commoner woman's secret. Yet this commoner woman knows nothing about Your Majesty. Your Majesty has no need to make a move against me. Yu Wengshun looked at me and smiled. Then what do you want? Freedom. Ina money and freedom, with no more worries. Wenjing found Yu Chun at the Imperial Garden, which was some distance from the main hall. She was crouching by the lake, splashing lake water on her face to stay awake. The hair by her temples was dampened by water, droplets sliding down the curves of her face and dripping into her collar, like a fallen fairy grooming herself. Wenjing had also been affected by that kind of sleep-inducing incense before. He knew what it felt like. One's reason like a taut string ready to snap at any moment. Yet the person before him was enveloped by the brushing moonlight, still cold and clear. Just like the lotus flowers in the pond, though, they had gone their separate ways. She still refused to bow her head for others' pleasure. Wenjing should have spoken in a mocking tone, but his words came out as a sigh of relief. How did you get here? The inner palace is forbidden territory. If you disturb the noble ladies, I won't be able to protect you. If I hadn't come here, you really wouldn't have been able to protect me. She raised her head with a smile, still calm and composed. Yet Wenjing felt as if his heart had been pickled sour and soft. She had no acquaintances in the palace. If she rashly left after drinking wine that had been tampered with, not to mention that Shi Lanzhen had already made arrangements, even if she ran into someone else, it would be hard to ensure her safety. Wenjing couldn't tell if he followed her out of worry that she'd drag him down or out of concern for her own sake. Yu Chun lowered her rolled-up sleeves, once again covering the scars of varying depths on her arms. Let's go back. We've been out for so long, it might arouse suspicion. She walked past Wenjing toward the great hall. She walked so quickly that she failed to notice the twitch of Wenjing's eyelids, the instant his gaze touched those scars. When the two returned to the great hall, they found the originally joyful banquet in complete chaos. Looking more carefully, Shi Lanzhen and a palace guard were kneeling in the center with improper conduct, while the guests in their seats were discussing animatedly, saying nothing more than disgraceful indecent behavior. Yu Chun seemed to think of something and looked at him meaningfully. What is your highness doing? She knew this was his doing and was somewhat surprised. Just conveniently dealing with the Shia residents, the princess consort need not overthink it. Wenjing's tone remained casual as always. Only he himself knew how anxious he had been earlier when he followed her out, and couldn't find any trace of Yu Chun. Wenjing hadn't expected that tonight's incidents would come one after another. The assassins were lying in ambush outside the palace gates. The shadow guards couldn't get close to the gates, and by the time they arrived, Yu Chun was already injured. Because she had blocked the attack for him, her face, just washed by the lake water. was exceptionally cold. As her strength failed, her complexion gradually merged with the pale moonlight. He could have dodged it, but she had shielded him, falling into his arms in such a disheveled state. The shadow guards arrived and engaged with the assassins. The palace guards came belatedly and drove both parties away. Looking back at the palace walls in the night, they were intimidating. Wenjing had never been afraid entering the imperial court and reaching this position. Life and death were but a thread apart. Yet now, the hand pressing on her wound was trembling slightly. Why did she block the attack for him? Why did she overestimate herself like this? I am not saving you. I just wanted to save a Jing. She opened her eyes with effort and said stubbornly, "But I am not him. The one you saved is me," when Jing responded to her, not knowing whether he was trying to convince her or himself. "I know, but this body is also his." This was her last sentence before losing consciousness. The emperor, upon hearing that he was attacked, specially dispatched the imperial physician to treat Yu Chun. Wenjing watched as the emperor before him pretended to furiously reprimand the palace guards for their negligence, feeling somewhat irritated. He rarely wished to actively touch upon the memories of those 3 years, but this time his thoughts voluntarily took him back. Actually, the emperor originally planned to eliminate the problem at its roots and had sent assassins when he was in his demented state as well. That time, Yuchun did the same thing, standing in front of him without hesitation, protecting his panicked and frightened self behind her. Last time was luckier than this time. She was only cut on the arm by a blade. Latter, perhaps the emperor used this incident to dispel his doubts and decided to spare the life of this seemingly foolish person, never sending anyone again. After finishing the act with Yuan Shun, Wenjing watched over Yuchun through the night until palace attendants came to remind him to change clothes for morning court. Officials were not allowed to stay overnight in the palace. Yuan Shun keeping Yuchun in the palace for treatment appeared as imperial grace on the surface, but secretly it was just using her as a hostage. His purpose was to force Wenjing to bypass Yuan Shun and move against the Yong'an Marquis manor. After all, during these 3 years, the Yong'an Marquis had become the sole dominant power in court, quite reminiscent of Wenjing from before. An assassination attempt before the palace gates was a grave offense. With this alone, he could take the opportunity to suppress the Yong'an Marquis manor and once again win over Wenjing. Yuan Shun had grown up after all, no longer the naive prince who could be manipulated at will. Now Wenjing could only follow his intentions and move against the Yong'an Marquis manor. Days became busy like this, with Wenjing entering and leaving the palace daily. Yuchun remained unconscious the whole time, kept alive by medicinal brews. The imperial physician said that strike had injured a vital spot, and whether she could wake up depended on her will. Wenjing believed it. He also believed she would definitely wake up after all. Her will to survive was the strongest he had ever seen, but Wenjing was still deceived by her. After the Marquis of Yong'an was punished, Yuan Shun immediately sent people to investigate his private assets. Under the dynasty, none are spared. Wenjing finally understood that Yuan Shun wanted to subdue both him and the Marquis of Yong'an together. From now on, they could only be subjects of the emperor, no longer having the ability to stand as equals with him. But his private assets had always been well hidden. Unless Wenjing recalled that during those 3 years when he was acting foolish, it was Yu Chun who managed things for him, maintaining the expenses and operations of the prince's mansion. When did she have contact with the emperor? It was probably after that time she blocked a sharp weapon for him and got injured. She said she wanted to buy meat buns from that shop at the end of East Market Street, and didn't return until dark, and she came back empty-handed, saying the shop's business was too good and they'd sold out by the time it was her turn. Later, Yuchun couldn't stand his pestering and made several steamer baskets full of buns for him overnight, with all kinds of fillings. The Yuchun of that time asked him if he wanted her to make buns for him for the rest of his life. It should have been that time, right? Wenjing could imagine how she threatened and cajoled the palace gate guards to relay messages to Yuan Shun, and then how she convinced Yuan Shun to spare his life. Thinking of this, Wenjing couldn't help but laugh out loud, using life as bait to lure him into the trap. She knew better than he did that he was Wenjing, Not that fool. What is the cruelest thing in this world? It is when the person you desperately protected wakes up, and the first thing they do is use you as a pawn. They spill the soup you made on the ground, leave you in a burning shop, and never look back. She was risking her life to save someone who no longer existed. She knew a Jing wasn't coming back, but she couldn't bear to see that body get hurt, because that was where a Jing had been. After hearing this, Wen Jing didn't know if he was trying to convince her or himself. He said, "But I am not him, you are saving me. Just taste those words." This isn't a rebuttal. This is a man proud to his very bones, almost humbly, clumsily trying to prove that in her heart, even if just a tiny bit of space, was reserved for Wen Jing himself. Unfortunately, there was none. From beginning to end, she only loved a Jing. Wen Jing was stopped outside the palace gates. A palace servant came to relay the message that Yu Chun had awakened and been sent back to the prince's manor to recuperate. Winter snow filled the capital, with no trace of spring to be found. Wen Jing's spies were all dispatched to destroy important evidence at his private properties. Despite meticulous planning, he had overlooked her. As if possessed by ghosts and gods, he went to the outskirts. Heavy snow fell, making the already rugged mountain path even harder to traverse. Wen Jing kept looking back, as if someone was still being led by the hand behind him, following him step by step. The once lush tree branches were now covered in white snow, and under the trunk where she used to sit, a pair of shoes was neatly arranged. Wen Jing remembered that this was what she had planned to make as a birthday gift for that fool. He found it childish. But now he held the shoes in his arms, not caring that the ice and snow on them soaked his clothes. Before descending the mountain, he heard a guard relay a message that people from the palace had come looking for him, saying Yuan Shun had urgent business and summoned him to the palace. They sent someone to fetch him as soon as he left the city gate. Thou called a summons. It was actually a warning that Wen Jing couldn't leave the capital easily. "I'll enter the palace right away," Wen Jing replied. For the rest of his life he could only maneuver against them in the capital to the bitter end. This was her final move, weakening his power base, making him fight Yuan Shun and the Marquis of Yong'an to the end, leaving him with no ability to capture her back. On the way to the palace, Wen Jing even wondered if their ending would have been different had he not concealed things from her and used her from the start. He found himself laughable. He clearly knew best that Yu Chon was very much like him. She would never love someone on her own initiative. She would never love him. Aunt Spring was encountered. Then day and night snow was cleared away. Yet no trace of spring was found. When I woke up, Wen Jing was not there. "You really are a lunatic, even crazier than that bastard Wen Jing. Weren't you afraid you wouldn't wake up?" Yuan Shun asked me. 9 deaths and 1 life, isn't that still life? I answered him with a smile. To outsiders, just say I didn't wake up. When Wen Jing enters the palace, have me drink some sleeping medicine. Rest assured, I will instruct the imperial physician to do so. Just like that, when Wen Jing wasn't around, I labored for Yuan Shun. When Wen Jing was around, I took medicine and fell unconscious. Yuan Shun asked me why I was so harsh on myself. I told him Wen Jing was suspicious, and if I wanted to escape, this was the only way. If Wen Jing one day became all-powerful, no matter where I fled to the ends of the earth, I would be dragged back. I just wanted to leave. That was all. Things went very smoothly. On the day I left the capital, heavy snow was falling. Yuan Shun was in an extremely good mood, so he came to see me off for a bit. "Are you really not considering staying in the palace? This common woman has been married before. Even if I wanted to offer your majesty counsel, it would easily invite gossip. For your majesty, me staying would actually be disadvantageous to you." "Fine, I can't argue with you." Yuan Shun waved his hand. "I've arranged the silver and the coachman. Now that Wen Jing can barely take care of himself, you can leave without worry. Once you are gone, don't come back." It was both an instruction and a warning, warning me not to regret and return to the capital. Yuan Shun was willing to grant my wish simply because he knew I wouldn't stir up trouble again, but he didn't know that my reason for leaving was merely because Wen Jing was not a Jing, and the prince's manor was no longer my home. I too once languished without finding spring. It was a Jing who parted the clouds and mist for me, allowing me to catch a glimpse of spring light. On the mountain path, there was no longer anyone to hold my hand and walk with me. The snow fell heavily, nearly freezing my tears. I put down the shoes I had made. A Jing. I am leaving now. You used to say you wanted to take a boat and drift wherever it goes, traveling around mountains and waters. I am going in your place now, so remember to bless me, okay? I know many people must feel suffocated after reading the ending, feeling it is hard to accept, feeling Yuchun suffered too much, feeling Wenjing deserved to die but can't bring themselves to hate him, feeling why good people don't get good endings, feeling why is true devotion always misplaced. I feel the same way, but thinking calmly, this story actually contains a very important lesson. And this lesson isn't just about ancient households and scheming, it is about each and every one of our real lives. What I admire most about Yuchun isn't her intelligence, isn't her forbearance, but rather she always clearly knew that a Jing was already gone. She didn't deceive herself with, "He'll come back," didn't wishfully think, "As long as I am good to him, he'll become like he was before." She cried, her heart broke, but she never lost her judgment because of attachment. In real life, the reason many people sink deeper and deeper, get hurt more and more in a relationship, isn't because they're not smart enough, but because they can't bear to admit that person who was good to you is already gone. You think you are waiting for him to get better, but actually you are just waiting for a shadow that has already disappeared. What Yuchun teaches us is loving someone isn't wrong, but when that person is no longer the person you loved, the greatest clarity is letting go, not because you don't love them anymore, but precisely because you love too much. So you don't want to waste that love on someone who is not worthy. She carried with her the warmth that a Jing had taught her what it means to be genuinely treated by someone, what unconditional kindness is, what a promise of never changing, even in 100 years means. She set out on her journey with all of this. She didn't become cold-blooded because she was hurt, didn't stop believing that genuine hearts exist in this world because she was let down. She simply chose to put this love where it is deserved, for example, on herself, to take the boat a Jing wanted to take, to see the landscapes a Jing wanted to see, to live out for him the freedom he never got to have. This is true strength. Not that you won't feel pain, but after the pain, you still choose to move forward. Not that you won't cry, but after crying, you still believe tomorrow will be better. Not that you won't love, but after loving, you still have the courage to start anew. So, my dear, if you are also going through a relationship that is causing you pain, if you are also hesitating about whether to leave, if you are also afraid of, what will I do after leaving, please remember Yuchun. Remember her on that snowy winter day, walking alone up that mountain path where no one would hold her hand anymore. She still left, because she knew spring was waiting for her ahead. She was once melancholy and unable to meet spring, but later she herself became her own spring.